everybody, and welcome to the Week in Review, where we have an unscripted chat about some of the major announcements that have been made over the past week and share our thoughts about those. We're going to start today's video with a chat about Nintendo's latest Indie Direct. So in the Indie Directs, Nintendo doesn't show off its own games, but rather the stuff that is coming from the smaller developers and publishers, and will generally be released just as a download on the eShop. Some of them get physical releases in the end, but for the most part it is just that really small stuff that really does fill up the eShop. And this video this week had a lot of really interesting stuff from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you played that in the arcades, then this upcoming one looks like it's going to be really good. There was a game called Getso Fumaden, which is getting released. It's a Hyaki Yagyo kind of Japanese yokai mythology game, which I love. There was a new game featuring kiwis, and I'm a big fan of the kiwi birds, so whatever that is, I'm going to be looking forward to playing that. There's another one called Labyrinth City, which was like this French art style Where's Wally thing. It looks really, really neat as well. And there's a House of the Dead remake coming as well. Who didn't enjoy House of the Dead back in the day? So having that as a remake is going to be a good thing as well. There was a lot of stuff, basically. You can check out a link at the bottom of this video for the full list of trailers, but there was a lot. And I guess the point that I want to make here is that Nintendo has done a better job than anybody in engaging with these indies over the last couple of years, and the Switch has really become the platform for indie games as a result. And while indie games don't necessarily sell systems by themselves, and a lot of people kind of overlook them because they are indie, and a lot of people out there only play AAA games for whatever reason, the fact that those games are there just deepens the library that is on the Switch. And it is a big reason that the Switch is my main console these days. It's not just for Nintendo games. Nintendo's great, of course, but it's also just that layer underneath, the amount of stuff and variety and creative ideas that you get to play thanks to Nintendo and its efforts to engage with indies that has made that console what it is. So yeah, definitely check out those. If any of them catch your eye, support them, because indie games are really where the art side of the industry is these days. So for that reason alone, I definitely want to support them. Okay, so next up we have some film news, and it's not great news unfortunately, but it is very much worth talking about. Netflix has signed up the director of Godzilla vs. Kong, and his name actually escapes me right now, but he has been making waves in Hollywood, not least because of Godzilla vs. Kong. Netflix has signed this guy up to make a live-action Gundam film for Netflix. Now, while I'm certain this film is going to be of high quality because of the director that is attached to it, I have an issue with Netflix being a global company with a Japanese division, tapping an American to tell another Japanese story. This has happened over and over again in recent times, and I actually talked about this on a previous Week in Review with regards to Ghost of Tsushima. These companies have every ability to go into the Japanese film industry, which is big, vibrant, and certainly stocked with a lot of talent, and asking them to tell their own stories. Gundam is a Japanese story. It is one of the most venerable, most respected anime properties in, the entire history of the medium. So it would be more than possible to just go into Japan and ask them to make a film to tell their own story. The Japanese film industry has made a lot of excellent anime adaptations in recent years. But again, we have this global company based in America that is tapping Americans to tell Japanese stories for the rest of the world. And this is a big issue. This is an ongoing issue. It's kind of it's soft imperialism, and that's the only way you can really describe it. That there's this one country that is so overwhelmingly dominant in the world that it now feels entitled to tell the stories of other people. And if you don't have an issue with that, you're not really thinking very clearly about it. Yes, the film industry needs to make money, and yes, the American film industry knows how to make money like no other. But if you're going to engage with world stories, you really need to engage more deeply with the people that actually tell those stories. It's not enough to dictate to the world what these stories are. You need to also kind of ask them, what is this story? And the best people to tell the story of their own culture is people from that culture, not Americans. So next up, we have a story which is small in scale, but it has amused me a great deal, and I wanted to get it down on video while it is still relevant and true. The release of the House of Fata Morgana on Nintendo Switch, which is subtitled Dreams of the Revenants Edition, has been the first game, if the first version of that game, to get enough Metacritic reviews to have an aggregate score. And because there are 4 reviews currently on Metacritic, you need 4 reviews before you get the aggregate score. Because there are 4 reviews on Metacritic at the moment, and those 4 reviews are all 100%, 10 out of 10s, that game is currently the first game to, or the only game on Metacritic to have a perfect score, 100 out of 100, 10 out of 10, 100% A++ rating on Metacritic, which is pretty amusing. I mean, it is only 4 reviews, and if there were more reviews, of course the score will drop down a bit, because you can't assume that every critic out there is going to give a visual novel a 10 out of 10 score. But, and I would certainly expect it to drop down. There will be at some point someone else who reviews the thing and gives it a 4 out of 10 or whatever, because it's a visual novel and therefore not interactive enough, and because of that it must be a bad game. But for now, the fact that the only people that have reviewed the game are the visual novel fans, and out there in the critical body, at the moment the game is actually representative of its quality as a storytelling experience, because the House in Fata Morgana is an absolutely spectacular story. I am one of those 10 out of 10 reviews, and I gave it a 10 out of 10 purely because I haven't been so compelled by a story in a very, very long time. So it kind of feels good that at the moment, if you were to pull up every review on Metacritic, the one sitting at the very top, ahead of Ocarina of Time, ahead of GTA 5, ahead of whatever other game, Breath of the Wild, ahead of The Last of Us, ahead of all of those games is a humble visual novel, which is very niche, because even within the context of visual novels, this one's quite dark and quite inaccessible for people who like their games as fun. And yeah, it's just amazing that this kind of work of true art is currently the one that is dominating Metacritic. So good on all those other critics, and good on me for being part of it. And yeah, go and check it out while you still can. You can actually see a 100 score on a Metacritic. Next up, I'm going to talk about NFTs again, because I did mention NFTs a little while ago when they really started to hit the mainstream in terms of getting the attention of the media and whatever. NFTs being non-fungible tokens. They're an application of crypto, which is planet-destroyingly bad stuff, and I'm not even exaggerating about that. One of the big criticisms of both Bitcoin, crypto, NFTs, however you want to frame it, is that the amount of power they draw to maintain them is the equivalent of a pretty large country. I think at last count, the entire body of Bitcoin, crypto, NFTs was consuming more power than the entire country of Argentina, and I can only imagine that's increased since, because everybody's doing it now. And when I did mention this a couple of weeks ago, I did mention and warn that NFTs were going to be part of the video game industry in a big way. It was just a matter of time before developers and publishers figured out how to get very cynical with this stuff and just capitalize on it. And it has happened. So we've already seen bits of art from video games being sold off as NFTs. We've seen a little bit of fiddling around the edges. But a press release dropped in my inbox this week that goes all in with NFTs. Shaun the Sheep gaming NFTs drop on the Sandbox NFT metaverse. That is the headline that dropped in my inbox earlier this week. It is some Shaun the Sheep official mobile game from a developer from Hong Kong, and there are NFTs in there. I do not care to even figure out how this works. I did not read too far past the headline and the little subhead there, which says revolutionary NFT gaming metaverse will release a set of official Shaun the Sheep games and digital assets, NFTs, starting with an NFT drop on April 20th. But once again, if you ever see NFTs in relation to video games, please do not support that game. I am asking this because I am not in any way exaggerating. NFTs are going to destroy the planet. They are absolutely unnecessary. They are a cynical grift, and they're a scam. They're a scam from these companies to make money out of people when it's all just so entirely unnecessary. Nothing was broken that NFTs fix. So don't support them. If you see it in relation to video games, do not support those games. And so finally this week we are going to talk about Epic Games and Sony, who have made a big announcement indeed. For Epic Games' part, they have just completed another $1 billion round of funding, which will obviously go into helping Epic Games continue to build up its Epic Store, to continue to make more video games, to continue to support Fortnite and whatever. It's a big deal. Any company that gets $1 billion in investment is certainly doing the right things and pulling the right moves, so good on Epic Games from that perspective. $200 million of that billion is coming from Sony, our good friends at Sony, and it's pretty obvious why Sony would want to invest in Epic Games. For one thing, it gives Sony some kind of leverage in the PC game market, and Sony is increasingly releasing its games into the PC market because it is an additional ad for them. They obviously don't see the PC market as competitive to their console business anymore, and any company from outside of the PC market will probably see Valve as a problem in terms of being able to involve themselves with the PC market. It helps Sony to invest in the most immediate competition to Valve in Epic. Plus, of course, it gives Sony a seat at the table when it comes to Fortnite and various other Epic properties, which is a pretty big deal. It's huge. As an investment, it makes a lot of sense. The problem is, and something that a lot of people, including me, of course, noticed and pointed out on social media, Sony just announced it was shutting off a whole bunch of servers for its PlayStation 3, PSP, and PlayStation Vita online stores, which is going to take hundreds of games out of circulation permanently because a lot of those games aren't available on anything else. The only way you could play them was on one of those 3 platforms, and they're going to disappear, which is going to make archiving them difficult. Certainly it makes playing them impossible if you don't already own them. You're not going to be able to discover them down the track. And in theory, Sony did that because it couldn't afford to keep the servers going. But it did have a cool $200 million lying around to invest in Epic. So once again, we've just got to question Sony's motives. Is this a company that wants to support the arts, or is it a company that is purely driven by the money-making side of things? And it's really unfortunate. Back with the PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, and PSP, you would say that Sony obviously wanted to make money because it was a company, and companies need to make money, but you would have said that Sony certainly supported the arts as well. It is getting harder and harder to suggest that now. It's invested in a company that just has nothing to do with the arts itself. Epic is not an arts-driven company, and they're doing so at the expense, obviously, of an awful lot of the art that they've produced in the past. So, unfortunate, but worth keeping an eye on anyway. Anyway, that is enough for the Week in Review this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a good chat about all this stuff. It's been a good week. Please do consider backing me on Patreon if you enjoy my videos. Costs you $1 a month, or you could do more, of course, if you're feeling generous. And I do have a surprise for people who are backing me on Patreon as of this weekend. There's going to be some really cool exclusive stuff for my Patreon backers going forwards. And yeah, it's definitely, keep an eye out for it, basically. If you do enjoy my videos and just want to make sure that you don't miss them, you can always click the like and subscribe buttons there. That way you will see each video as I upload them. I do a lot of them. And other than that, I just want to wish you all to have a wonderful weekend. Play lots of games, have lots of fun, and we will see you next week.